All right, so I'm gonna get recording, so get right into it.
Sure,
okay?
absolutely.
But introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
So,
Sebastian.
I'm Priscilla.
Priscilla, nice to meet you.
So excited to meet you and hear your story. So let's get right into it.
Sure.
When was your first encounter?
I want to say 77 or 78. I was really young. Thought about this one. We were living in Chicago, and my parents decided to go to Mackinac Island in Wisconsin, and we were camping. And I remember this pretty much because we had tents, we were outside, we were doing all this stuff camping, and I think it was either on the way there or the way home, and I was laying in a station wagon in the back. Remember the old station wagons that fold in the back and you lay flat? So I'm laying back in the back, and I'm looking out up at the sky as we're driving. And all of a sudden, there's this UFO that was right above the car. And I'm looking at, you're staring at the center light and everything. And that was one of the things that I remember, the earliest memories I ever had. And, skip forward a couple of years later, we moved to Texas. And some of the ones another one that happened then is I was in bed at home.
Oh, hey, honey.
Sure.
So, why don't you come here and you ask questions too?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
You're better interviewing than I am.
Yeah.
Okay, let me grab a chair real quick.
Yeah.
Dude, let's not skip over that. You looked up and you saw a UFO. Can you describe it?
Sure. It was circular. It had a huge light underneath the center, like an orangish white light, and then there were lights all kind of around the bottom. And then you're just looking at the bottom, and it's just one of the last things I remember. I don't remember anything else past that.
And so you were 4 or 5 years old?
4 or 5 years old, and then, like I said, Mackinac Islands is like a rural island in Wisconsin, but it's also a great camping spot for people. So that was probably the earliest one. Then fast forward a year or two, we're in Texas. We're living in Duncanville in the south part of Dallas. And I remember one night I'm sleeping in my bed, and I feel like somebody's carrying the entire bed, like it's swaying. And that was another instance I remembered, but vividly, I remember this one was there was a craft that was hovering over the house, because we had a driveway that kind of went down the hill by the house, straight. You could park straight, or you could turn into the garage. And I remember because this UFO was over that straight part, and it was like some kind of ramp or something. And I just remember my parents were arguing with aliens. They wanted to take me. And then one of the last things they said, "We'll see you on your 30th birthday." I remember that as plain as day.
Your parents were arguing?
Arguing with them, yeah.
Oh my God.
And it was really, really bizarre. And I just remember they said they would be back on my 30th birthday. And I was like, wow. It's just something like that sticks in your head. And we had, if you can imagine, Texas homes are more like ranch homes. They're really big, and you have your garage kind of next to your house. And we had enough land that we had a swimming pool with a shallow end and deep end on the back part of this house. And then they had trees off in the distance. And I remember every night when it would get dark, I'd want to close the curtains, to the house and everything. I still do that to this day. It's a really good thing. And when I sleep, when the blankets, I always pull the blankets over my head. It's like a security thing.
So are your parents still with us?
Well, they're still living. They're divorced. They divorced when I was 13. It was January 87.
So since being an adult, have you had a conversation with your parents of what happened?
Well, that's the thing. My father doesn't like it. If I mention it, he says, I remember one time we had a conversation in the 90s, and he said, if you ever mention this again, I'm going to have you committed. Seriously. He was angry. My mother, one of the earliest memories I have, outside of the things that we experienced, was my mother was watching a show late at night, and I remember in our living room, you had those privacy doors that you close. And she was watching, I think, 2020, Remember the old ABC news program? It was something on aliens, UFOs, and the whole 9 yards. And I just remembered opening the door and I was like, you know, like really in shock. And she's like, oh, go back to bed, you know, and things like that. And I mean, but the interesting thing I want to mention is that, you know, I went from, I told you, I went from being like a total taboo subject, like I was afraid of it completely, to more recently in the last 10, 15 years, I really start reading more books and more things about encounters, trying to cope maybe, but I realize all my experiences are completely unique, completely. Like they're not like anything that anybody's ever written, seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly to do with my disability. I really do.
So do you think the one in Texas was the same one, or it looked the same, or?
They look like these. I mean, very specifically this picture, not like, you know, what Whitley Strieber draws or any of the books, you know, or even some of the characters they show now, or I mean aliens I should say, the sketches, specifically they look like that alien, with eyes a certain way and a head a certain way, you know, with bodies a certain, you know, type.
And you have drawings of other sketches of what you had seen, right?
Sure, yeah, and I want to, well, I'll go into more chronological order.
Okay.
But well, I guess what I'm asking is, are you under the impression that these are the same ones that keep coming back to you, or is this?
It feels like it, except for that last one. That last one was more, like I said, that insectoid alien.
Yeah.
But-
Do you have a drawing of that?
Yeah, see that one here, this one? I'm gonna go back to this one I got. I'm trying to, let's see, go back to this.
So,
See that one? This one, like I said, it was very tall, very tall. I remember being kind of bound or suspended in a way where I couldn't move.
so was this your first one?
That's one of the more recent. This would have been
Okay, and you said this one had like robes and it was kind of regal.
regal, very flowing, almost like a silk he was wearing. Because I remember the way he moved, it was almost like he floated. Like he had this very like malevolent sort of attitude. You know? Like, I'm gonna do this, and you're gonna, no matter what, this is what I'm gonna do, and you can't stop me, kind of thing.
So when you were abducted, were you in your home? And
Let's get to that first.
Sure. Okay.
We left off in Texas.
sorry.
Sure. No,
The whole blankets over your head.
yeah,
And
like
all that,
I
okay, go from there.
like I said, most of the time I would wake up in the mornings. I have nosebleeds, a lot of nosebleeds, and just this weird feeling of feeling almost tired. And then, but like I said, the other strange encounters, like those were, I was maybe 7, 8 years old, and they were then it goes almost like it's very infrequent, and then boom, it picks up again. It picks up in like almost like an intense sort of like you hit puberty or you grow to a certain age, and then there's just things that happen that just I can't explain. I mean, for example, you know, my father, like I woke up, and this would have been 16, 17. I woke up one night or in the morning, and our sliding glass doors open halfway in Dallas. We moved in a different part of Dallas, and he's like, I know you stole money out of my wallet. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no. You know, a lot of times he didn't know I was hoarding money for lunch to buy things. So that really bothered me, because he's like, I saw you take money. I'm like, I never woke up. I never did anything. But to me, it felt like it was an encounter, and he didn't want to admit it. Because I kept saying, if I stole money from you, fingerprint the doors. You know, fingerprint, call the police, do whatever. And it's just something that we were never like that. So I truly felt that time it was an encounter. And something happened. I just don't remember anything specific about that time, you know. And then jump forward a couple of years later, I'm living with my mom in a condo in California. And I remember this specifically, like I wake up in the night, you know, go across from my room, do like a U through the house to go to the kitchen. and all I remembered was I ran smack into an alien in the dark.
In your home?
In my condo, yeah. And it was like, and it was just like, boom, I felt it, I saw it, and then I blanked completely. Like just completely blanked.
And what kind of alien was that?
That was more similar to this gray alien. It was up as like, came to my chest kind of thing. And when I was standing up, and I just remembered like the feel of their skin, you know, like when you bump into somebody like and you're in line or something, and just that, it was like, you know, I'm like, oh no, and boom, out, just gone, don't remember anything. And that was 91, 92. Now, this is gonna be a real hard one to hear. This is about maybe 2 years later. I was living with a guy who is like a personal trainer, and he worked as a teacher gymnast for like, you know, grade school gymnastics and so forth. Younger guy. He was maybe about 3 or 4 years older than I was, and I was about 21. And he, you know, was doing martial arts. He's in great shape, you know. Me, I'm disabled, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, but we were living together as roommates. And I remember this. I'm laying in bed, and I know they're coming, and I want to bang on the wall to wake up or wake someone up. And I'm like doing this. I'm like banging, banging, banging. And then I somehow got out of my room, tried to go to his room, and this is really unique. There were these small aliens that were over his bed, but they had red glowing eyes, really like stop sign red. And I just remembered I looked at them and they looked at me, and bang, I'm out. And I kept saying to him, isn't this kind of weird? You know, I have a disability, right? I have these physical ailments, different things, and he's prime of his life, you know, tip-top shape. And I thought, yeah, if you want to do an abduction or experimentation or comparison, how would you do it? You get one guy who's like a test, a base, and then you've got me. And everything is unique to me, seriously. And that just for some reason stayed in my memory. And the other one was, I thought it was an apartment, but I realized it's actually the house I have here in Oregon. It was until way later. I mean, think about it. This is 1994, and I just remembered seeing like a glowing craft outside the house, and I want to run and hide. And there's only one place, even in my house today, because you have a frosted glass in the front, and you have an open back in the back. I have a sliding door, and my first inclination was to hide in the bathroom because there's no windows. But I remember hearing this horrible, high-pitched whine, and then the lights, and just feeling like I've got to hide, just really got to hide. And that's the most interesting. I had that in that apartment in the 90s, but I didn't move into this house until 2004 here in Oregon. So it was just a weird feeling of, I don't know, future type.
Like a premonition?
Yeah, like a premonition, yeah. I mean, and so, you know, that was pretty intense too. There always is like, I don't know, they like playing cat and mouse with me kind of thing. They really do. It's really bizarre.
And how often do you get visited?
It seems like once a year, maybe, at times, and then long periods where nothing happens. Specifically, like, I don't know, I get this like weird feeling like somebody's walking in my house, or somebody's coming in, you know what I mean, or somebody's watching you, you know, that sort of feel. But again, going back to, again, kind of like chronological, this was a weird one. This was about a year and a half, about a year and a half after that encounter I had in an apartment. I moved to another place that had a house. It was like the next door neighbor. It was a mansion. It was open field. It wasn't a canyon. And I was above a garage renting this house, and it was like 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and then kind of like a common area room.
Was this in Oregon?
No, this was in San Diego. San Diego. The 90s ones were in San Diego specifically, but this one was really, really out there, really weird, because you had these steps, stone steps going on the outside of the house, next to the garage, and you walk up, and there'll be this first room is this guy's room, and in my room was the second room, and there's a guy living downstairs behind the garage. But I remember this one night, it was like a uniform, boom, 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 steps, 3 of them in unison. Like if somebody's, like when you have a marching band and people walk a certain way. And I remember because I had Christmas lights up over my window and the door. There was a door with like a Venetian blind over it. And there was Christmas lights over the next part of the window. So they had this like, that reddish sort of glow when you have the Christmas lights up at night and nothing else on. And I'm laying in bed like this, and I've got the blanket over my face, my head, and everything else. And I specifically remembered this, somebody's tapping me in the hand. And it's like, I go to kind of grab it, and they say to me, don't look. Seriously, don't look. It's in my mind, it's in my head. They're telling me this. And I pull the blankets back, and I look down at the foot of the bed, and it's like this alien that is a hybrid of me. And it was weird because I had a twin brother. My twin brother died one day after one day I was old. When I was 1 day old, I was in an incubator. My mother had us 2 months premature, and I never knew my brother at all. I only found out about him when I was 10 through birth certificates.
Oh wow!
But the weirdest thing was that whole time I could hear them talking in my head, and again I blacked out. I just completely blacked out. But like I said, I remember them walking up and walking across, opening the door, coming in, hearing all this, they're coming in, they're coming for me kind of thing. And just having that shock of just seeing like a hybrid, you know what I mean? Like you're not expecting it. And worse, like me, like it's my brother and just my dead brother. I never knew him. Just, at that time I would have been, it was 95, 96, 23. So, let's say mid-ish kind of time in the 20s. And
so when you have that feeling, you said you have this feeling that they're coming. Is that a scary feeling, or is it just it's scary?
Very scary.
So you're afraid of these?
Of course. Like another one I had was we were driving, let's say it's here in Oregon. We were maybe near Cottage Grove, right? And it's a night where it's like a blue light, right? It's a blue light, it's a cold night, right? It's a winter night. And I look up and I see this glowing craft, like a lampshade, where you see the light from the inside, and I look up and it's just like a dark spot, sort of, like something's moving in it. And I'm like, oh no, come on, And I just looked at it and I'm like, nah, it's not a UFO. I always do this. It's not a UFO. It's not. And then next thing I know, this thing's like behind our car. And again, I black out. I mean, that's, again, it's always like I don't seem to remember those things. And again, that would have been 2000-ish, closer to 2010. But this last one, the one we have the regression for, see, I was doing a regression for a different reason. My adopted mom's sister is a holistic healer, but she's done cases where she actually documents the past life regression, so they can actually look up the person in life and what they've done, and she's really thorough about that. She only did 2 regressions for me recently. One was in 96, and more recently now was 2024. And I was going through like a breakup, really bad breakup, and I was really heartbroken. And she was trying to help me establish why we had that connection. And immediately, this just jumped out. Because I had like a recall. I thought it was a dream, because I woke up and I was screaming and sweating, and I just remembered I'm driving with her. This is how even the regression starts. I'm driving with her, and I had this habit of putting my arm on the armrest of the car and having my hand on the gear shift. I drive on automatic, but it's just force of habit. I always put my hand like that, and her hand's over mine. And I just remembered this horrible woo sound, like a deep, vibrating, and I'm driving, and it's foggy, and I look and I see this huge, just huge black sphere above the car. And I'm like, no, I know they're coming. And that's what I remembered in a dream. And I thought it was like a dreamlike state. And that was a couple of years before we actually did this regression. And I don't know the exact date. I wanna say it's in between 2013 and 2020 for sure. Because I'm driving out of Eugene on the 126 going to Veneta. And my ex, her mom and her actually lived in Veneta near Fern Ridge Lake. So it's the only place I can place it. And just like a grayish thick fog. And like I said, I dreamt about it and I texted her and I woke up and I said, oh my God, I had this horrible nightmare. And I woke up and I was screaming and sweating. And then, like I said, we did the regression and we were just talking about maybe she could have been another past life. You know, I've done, the last regression we did was like, you know, you're in heaven and here we go. You're going to go into a life and what's going to happen. You know, conflicts and people, you know? No, this was specifically me and her right then and there. And we go straight into that. I have that feeling. I know I feel her hand. I know I feel the car. I'm in the car. And all of a sudden they just take both of us. And I'm screaming. I'm like, I want to hide. You heard it on the recording. It's like, it's just this horrible, like this one more than anything was so visceral, so detailed. I don't know if it's just the fact that I was under regression, but it's not like anything I've ever read, nothing like anybody I've seen any other people experience. Like, you know, you get taken out of the car, you're naked, like I'm standing up, but I can't move. That's the other thing. I can't stand in one space, in real life, let's say, right? But this is all real life. But the whole point is, my legs start to cramp really bad, and I've got to keep moving. This was almost like you're being suspended, and you just can't move. I mean, I could think, I could scream, but I can't move. And I see them. See them take her, and I'm like, leave her alone, leave her be, leave her out of this. Do what you want to do to me, but don't do it to her. And again, I know this is real because, see, nobody knew this. I proposed to her in December of 2013, and I kept it a secret. Nobody knew about it, but I did it because we weren't living together. So I wanted to, and that's the thing in my regression, I'm saying this is my wife. See what I mean? It's like no one knew this. And it's there, it's actually happening, it's actually occurring. And then I realized something after I listened to this recording. They're saying, I'm saying, but they're saying also too, she's in pain. And I thought it was, she's in pain for what they were doing to her. But I think now it's that they knew that she was going to have cancer, that her ovarian cancer is very old, and they were trying to say there's something causing her pain. But I'm interpreting it as you're causing her pain. You're actually abducting her. You're doing things, and they took a child from her. They took multiple children actually, because there's these aliens that are kind of hurting these little kids, and I can't see them. But I know they're little. They're like maybe between 5 and 7, you know, and they're not aliens. They're hybrids, I think. I mean, it's just really, I just got that sense of it. And I'm like, you don't understand. For me to have that, so much of that fear for so many years, and then to realize it really was true, is like, to me, it's devastating. I mean, in a weird sense, it's like I told you, this whole encounter was not like anything I'd ever experienced before. I mean, and even when I went from like 96, and I'm living with my adopted mom ended up with cancer about a year later, breast cancer. And it was a fiasco because we went to the oncologist, they punctured a cyst. They were doing a cyst biopsy, they punctured the cyst, it spread from her breast to her lymph nodes, and she had to have a double mastectomy. I helped her through all that, 7 years. but we were still having encounters during that too. That's the thing, because like I told you, one night I'm laying in bed and I just start screaming. I'm literally screaming, and I wake up and I look and I'm turned this way, and right next to my bed is a hooded figure, a hooded alien. This is totally unique to this particular time. I'm like, and I just screamed at him, and then bang, I'm out. That's how it always happens. It's like, I don't know if that has anything to do with my disability, my brain, what they can do. You know?
You mentioned your disability several times. What is your disability?
Oh, I have cerebral palsy,
Okay.
and it's basically when I was born, that 2 months premature in the birthing room. When they birthed me, I was in the clinic, and they didn't have proper incubators and things like this, so they had to transfer me to the hospital. And in that process, I ended up with brain damage. But it's a weird thing that it's like it affects the left side of my body, both left arm, upper arm, and left leg, and balance and coordination. And the interesting thing is, my ex-girlfriend, she has issues with her gait. She had something where she fell into a track gate, and so she had an issue with her ankles and stuff. And I always feel like she's half of my soul that's missing. Mm-hmm. Seriously. I know maybe my brother. First I was thinking my brother, but it was more her. Mm-hmm. And there's just things that I've experienced and I've encountered that don't make sense. They really don't make sense. Maybe you want to file this under a paranormal thing, but not going into too much. My father was very, very abusive, and I remember this was end of my freshman year. And this is another thing I've never experienced before ever, was he kept saying, well, no one's gonna wanna date you. No one's gonna wanna be with you. And I remember I was crying. I went to my room, and it was a very hot day. I'd been out swimming, and I went and laid down, and I had this dream or something about like, it was my ex-girlfriend. She's younger and I'm younger at that time, right? She comes to me and she's like, she's wearing a one-piece bathing suit. She's laying next to me, on me actually. And we're embracing and we're telling each other we love each other. And I just remember she said to me, I love you, don't forget me, come find me. And that was 1989, and we didn't meet until 2013. And I said to her, because she sent me old, younger photographs of her, and I was like, that's you. You were there. You were there. I was like, and we're about 5-6 years difference. And again, the same thing with the regression, the first regression I did. There's 2 instances. I don't know if they're real, you want to file this under paranormal, but it feels like all these encounters are all mixed together in a weird way. Mm-hmm.
So did she have before you guys got together, did she have a history of encounters also? Or?
I don't know. She's very open about it. You know, we talk about it all the time, but I don't know. You know, she loves the woods. She lives near Veneta, but a lot of times with her memory's not the best. So I don't know if it's because of trauma maybe, or if maybe she did experience stuff, but she was always very open about it. We could talk about it all the time. You know, I tell her about the books I read and different things like that. The only thing is she did not want to hear this recording. She didn't.
And that's the regression therapy?
That's the regression. Yeah, that's the one from this year that was pretty traumatic. And I told her, I kind of prefaced it with what happened. And I was really shocked because we've talked, I've talked to her ad nauseum about the Barney and Betty Hill incident, or, you know, Travis Walton, those famous cases and the things that people have experienced. And I said, God, it's a good feeling I can talk to you about it. I can share it with you. Mm-hmm. This one was like, nobody was wanting to hear this. No one. And I was like, why? I'm not used to that at all. I'm not. I always talk about every encounter I see and everything and try to get it, you know, straight in my mind and things like that. But.
So after your breakup, do you still talk to her?
Yeah. I actually still see her. She's going through chemotherapy and treatments, and she had a laparoscopy and a hysterectomy, I told you, in October. Mm-hmm. And there's just something when we're together, there's just like this energy. And it's a strange feeling to me. I've never had this with anyone. not even my family, not even my mother. And this closeness, this sort of like we're fated or bonded, maybe because we were introduced when we were younger, like in abduction sense. Because why would they be interested in her all of a sudden now? I don't think it was out of the blue. But the scariest thing, okay, I have to confess to this. This is gonna be hard, but I don't wanna tank my credibility. I was seeing 2 women for 12 years. And the reason I say this is because it was kind of unique to my situation, but they both knew about each other. They both have polycystic ovarian syndrome. But more crucially, I know at least with the woman I'm living with, even now we're just friends, we're roommates, everybody's we're broken up kind of thing. But she went to the doctor, and I know she's had reproductive issues. And they did the OBGYN looked at her and said, there's multiple scarring of your uterus, multiple pregnancies. Well, I know she's only been with one man prior to me. And 2, she had an IUD. And 3, I just stopped sleeping with her in 6 months after 2014. So she wasn't sexually active, I wasn't either.
So you think that she's been abducted and experimented with by aliens?
Yeah, or had babies taken out. Because again, how do you explain, how do you account for it? Really?
What does she say about it?
She agrees. She agrees because she told me about, the encounters that she had and the aliens that she drew. And I said, this one sort of, I don't remember seeing this, but it has a sort of a familiarity to it. Was these ones. This sort of.
Sorry about all this background noise.
No. This sort of a praying mantis, but a different one from the one that I saw. And she said it was more around the time of middle school that she ended up.
I thought it was terrifying.
Sorry.
She ended up missing for a couple of hours and couldn't account for it. And her mother was angry, her and her friend. They said they saw something on a playground in a park or whatever. Here's another picture too. These are all her drawings that she
Afraid to
did.
grab it. No.
Oh, sure. No. There's one more. I think there's one more I can show you too. But again, these are the creatures that she encountered. And when I looked at her, I said, this one does not, let me see specifically. This one and this one, if you want to show this one too. These 2 do not specifically, I feel like, no, I've never seen that. I've never specifically seen that. But this one that she drew, this other one, now this one in the beginning, I'm going to show Steve too. Now this one specifically reminds me of the robed one, but this one has an air of familiarity to me because we talked about it. I said, yeah, it was something about the eyes and the head and sort of thing. But like I said, she drew these 2 other ones, and I kept saying, no, this is familiar to me as much as that one particular
God, that is
thing.
absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like, and again, it's not anything I've ever seen or a movie or a book or any description. These are all completely unique to us. I mean, and again, I don't know because like I said, I don't remember anything like, sperm taken or experiments or, things in the moment or where you shown something or some kind of message. No, none of that. None of it. Seriously, none. It's the only other thing I was thinking, and this is kind of odd and bizarre, but I had this thing where I felt like I had, and I talked about it, like I'm having sex with one woman and it's an alien. It's an alien hybrid for sure. Because I have this feeling, I look at her face and I go, you're an alien. And this was a dark-haired woman, very skinny, had normal human-like features, but if you stared at her face and you looked at her eyes, immediately I was fearful.
And this is during an abduction, or this is?
This is, yeah, I was thinking during a time of an abduction, and this would have been about 2014, 2015. And I specifically told both of my exes, I know it sounds confusing, but I told both of them, I said, it was either like I was having sex with one of them and another one's watching, But the other person I felt again was kind of controlling everything. The person was sitting in the corner, and it's just this strange feeling. You know, you're like there's passion, but at the same time, it feels like there's something not right. There's something. It's not like a sexual fantasy or anything. It's more like I'm asked to perform. I'm asked to fulfill something. You know, like impregnate her or something like that. It's a really, really bizarre feeling. And I told both of them about it. I said, have you ever felt like you'd seen something or experienced something like this, or seen me in that instance? Maybe if they were watching you, or if they were there, or if this kind of thing. And they were both like, no. But I mean, like I said, I don't have a problem with intimacy. I don't have a problem with like sexual fantasies, let's say, or anything like that. That's not this. That is not this. This is something that's like completely controlled. And you get this in your mind. It's like this. Just,
like a mind control for a purpose.
Right.
Like.
Right.
Okay.
This is more of like, this is not sex. This is not passion. This is not pleasure. This is a transaction, basically. They want sperm. They want me to impregnate her, and she's gonna go off and, you know, what have you. And again, it was a really bizarre feeling because, like I said, I stopped sleeping with my girlfriend that I lived with, and yet I had a girlfriend that I was seeing, and I'm more passionate to her. And yet she's going through polycystic ovarian syndrome. She had a cyst on her ovary, so they remove it, and they remove the fallopian tube. Mm-hmm. And she kept saying, "Don't worry, you'll never get me pregnant." But for some reason, I could do everything but penetrating sex. And I was constantly in fear of it, constantly. And I think it's kind of tied to all the abductions, you know, seeing children, losing children, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm dealing with a woman who's, the one I'm living with is a caregiver. She has a hell of a good medical background. The other girl, has a child development degree, works with children, and then after a couple of years goes into caregiving, and again, you know, I told her, I said, I don't want to have children. You know, can we use birth control? Can we do this? Can we do that? And then finally, I got a vasectomy in 2017, and I felt like they were angry. Believe me, right away, I was like, I got this feeling like they're gonna come back and they're gonna get, you know, they're gonna be like, nope, we're still gonna find a way to get your sperm and do what we need to do, kind of thing. And that was really bizarre to me. I can't explain it, but, you know, again, I mean, how do you really? I mean, really, especially for me, because, you know, I'm living in this plane, right, where I don't want to have children, and yet there's these children are off Earth, and they're with these aliens, and I have no interaction with them whatsoever. I don't see them, I don't touch them, I don't name them, none of it. It's like they're theirs. And again, the sad part, and I want to mention this, is that when I was with my ex, just 2 weeks ago, you know, she was having chemo treatment, mm-hmm. and I'm sitting there holding hands, and she goes, well, they took all my equipment, right? They took all my chances to have a child, right? And I looked at her, and it's just this, she goes, just this tiny little feeling in me was like, I wanted to have a child. And right away I said to her, yeah, I feel the same way. I just a small part of me wanted to have a child. And I looked at her, and I know this may sound a little off, but I meant it. I said, our daughter is waiting for us in heaven. Like, just like that. And it was like, we're both feeling the same thing at the same time, you know? And I think it's partly because our children have been taken from us, you know? Wow. I mean, it's how do you explain it? We're both two people that we both agreed. We both honestly agreed. We both have physical issues. You know, she loved working with children. She thought that's enough for her. And now all of a sudden, it's like we're both talking like this at a very vulnerable time for her, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose her, but I can't explain it. It was like somebody was singing this out of me, like out of my soul. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just have this feeling, like almost like a second intuition of what happened. I can't explain it. I can't. But like I said, it has to be a part of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is intense. Oh my God.
I know. It took a lot for me not to cry. It really did, because, you know, you're looking at someone who possibly could be terminal, you know,
Yeah.
who loses their chance to have a child and everything else. And I told her, I said, there's nothing this cancer can't take from you, that I love you, seriously. And then coupled with all these experiences and all this other stuff. And I did tell her, I said, look, I tried to fight for you. I tried. And I feel like I failed. That's the worst part. I feel like this deep-seated failure inside of me of, you know, living in fear, having to do this, seeing her get hurt, and, you know, feeling that anguish of, I can't do anything.
So your ex feels like she's been experimented onto and conceived and babies taken.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Because again, how do you explain scarring of the uterus and things like this, and things that are just, you can't account for. We know we're not promiscuous people. It's not like I thought she was sleeping with multiple men behind my back and having an abortion. I mean, think about it. There's records for that. This is more like, well, this is what we found and we can't explain it. And most recently for me, the same kind of thing. They found a cyst in my neck in 2021, and it's plain as day on the x-rays. And I go back a year or two later, they can't find it. They can't account for it. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Because most everything that happens to me, it's like, okay, you have this, you go for surgeries, and we track this, and we do that. Can't explain it.
And you said that was 2019?
No, that was 2021, 2022 when they did it. It was in 2021 because I did it after the COVID shots and the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And you know, I've been having like COVID headaches and things like this, but I mean, I've always had nasty migraines, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Now, you said that, when was your last abduction?
Like I said, this last encounter, I would think it's got to be somewhere. I wish I could pinpoint a date, but I feel like it's 2014, 2015, possibly.
Okay.
And when that happened, because of the circumstance, the area, why would I go there, kind of thing. I'm not used to prone to going to Veneta for no reason, so that's why I say it's more specific to that time. But there's a couple more I forgot to mention. There was another one in my house. I remember this vividly. It's like I'm laying in bed, I've got covers over my head, and it's like bright, like the sun is in my room. Intensely bright. I'm looking at the sheets on my bed because I'm laying on my stomach. And I've got the covers over my head. I'm like, oh, no, come on, not now. And I I just got angry and I threw the blankets back and I look over and I glanced over and I've got a queen size bed in my room and I've got a desk. So there's about a chair, this chair's width in between the two. Maybe a little bit more space. And right away I see this gray alien, and I'm talking like gray, almost like a crayon gray, whitish gray. And the head just kind of turns like this real slow. And boom, I'm out. But I specifically remember the eyes. The eyes were more like cat's eyes. Like you have a pupil in another spot, and almost like it's wearing a turtleneck, like some kind of bodysuit material, whatever. And like I said, it just kind of just turned like this, made eye contact with me, and I'm out, completely out. And I'm like, that definitely was an encounter. For me, that was like specific, like, you know what I mean? Like this encounter too. Or, you know, even with all the other ones, they all feel like they're part of me. They all feel like they happen. But this one is more of like a really, well, we know we're gonna take you. We know it's gonna be bad. You know what I mean? Like, and that sort of thing. And you have to remember too, when they take me, especially like that time, I'm walking down my stairs and I feel like I'm floating because they know I can't move very well, right? Mm-hmm. And I can see one of them in the front and the back of his head, and they're guiding me down to take me out to craft or whatever they were gonna do. and that's kind of pretty much all I remember. So I don't know if it's like a protection mechanism that I just don't remember any of the other stuff that occurred, except for, like I said, except for this. And it was just so vivid, and just, I was screaming, and I was just like, you know, I mean, it's hard to describe. It's almost like your heart's gonna explode. You know, you're in so much fear, you're in so much anguish, you're in so much pain. And yet it's not only what they're doing to you, but it's also this sort of, you can't fight back. You can't do anything. Your mind is going, and that's the thing, even for me, my mind is stronger than my body. You know what I mean? Even in this life, I mean, all the things I have to cope with, all the things I have to deal with. So why wouldn't they want to take me? You know, I'm an anomaly, technically. Because if you look at most kids that have cerebral palsy, you know, they're severe, they're in a wheelchair, they have real hard times moving or communicating and talking. But specifically for my case, it's like, yeah, I had lots of things. I had a lot of corrective surgeries, and why not? I mean, really, why not? If you're gonna, you know, like if you collect butterflies, or you look at animals, or you know, you do tracking or whatever, you're gonna look for the most unique thing you can find. Because it's going to stand out to you. If they're observing us, or they're taking samples, or they're taking children, or whatever, again, you have to look at it like, yeah, my set of circumstances, completely fate. Roll the dice. I don't think you could repeat it if you even if you had a controlled experiment. I don't think you could. Honestly, I don't think you could come up with the same disability, the same abilities, or the same damage, or whatever, in that sense. So, you know, that's kind of how I treat it. I mean,
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
But
Wow.
that was another intense one too. But like I said, this one, 100%. Like, I wish I could tell you it's a positive experience, it's a happy experience, or they're telling me about the fate of humanity or the fate of the world. It's none of that stuff for me. It's just, this is what we're gonna do. This is where we're gonna take you.
Right,
You're
you're
gonna,
the experiment.
and you're gonna scream and cry and yell and do all this kind of stuff and be afraid. I mean, to the point you're probably gonna go into a coma, and yet they're still gonna do it no matter what. It's never been like, oh, you know, you're okay, we're gonna take care of you, it'll be fine, it's this, it's that, we don't want you to be in pain. I know the word, see, the funny thing is, I realized this year, I know pain before I knew the word pain. Seriously, as a kid, having surgeries and things like this. And I think it also translates into the abduction thing, is that, you know, I've experienced this, I've had pains, I've had things done to me. And it's not because, you know, I had surgeries or things like that. Those things are very specific, night and day difference. This is, you know, like, especially, you know, I've had my ankles turned out, I've had heels cut, I've had, you know, my hips rotated, all so I can walk, all so I can do these things, right? So I know the feeling when you go through that versus this, being abducted, being told, this is what you're gonna do, and this is what we're gonna do, and you have no choice. You have no say in it whatsoever. And I think that's probably why I probably translated into, I don't wanna have children in this life. I don't. I wanna be selfish to my partner. I wanna give all my love to my partner. I wanna have all of her love. I don't want to necessarily give that to a child. I don't. And it's interesting because they all kind of feel like that too. So it's not all about what I want. And I think it's partly because of the abductions, you know.
So what has happened after your vasectomy, with your encounters after that?
See, that's the thing. I think they looked at it like, you did it, but we can get around it. You know, we can still take your sperm, we can still do whatever we want. We can raise as many children as we want, that kind of thing. But I still feel like it's kind of slowed down, you know? It maybe because of, now I'm 51. So, you know, maybe it's just a little, you know, hey, maybe we don't need you as much anymore. We don't have to dip into the well every 5 minutes, or we've got the kids that we want, or we've got the information that we want, or what we've learned from you, kind of thing.
Okay. So it's been like 4 years since your last encounter?
Roughly about 4. Unless there's been other ones that I can't remember. Like I told you, there's another couple of ones that I can't explain it. I'm with my ex-girlfriend. I'm driving from Springfield, driving down the Beltline. I'm on the phone with her the whole time. I've got my phone in the cup holder, right? And I'm driving, and we're talking. I got it on speakerphone, you know, paying attention. I'm going to pick up my other girlfriend across town. I told you off of Burleson. And 2 separate instances. And this one I remember pretty vividly. I'm driving along, and I look over, and it's a supermoon. And it's right by that church before you hit, you're going to the Beltline before you hit Roosevelt. And I'm looking over at the moon, and I don't remember a damn thing after that. And worse, I get to my girlfriend's house, and she comes out, and she's like, "You're 45 minutes late." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I was here, I was driving." I mean, talking to my girlfriend, the other girlfriend on the phone, right? And I pull up to her house, and I swear to God, it's like, I can't account for 45 minutes at all.
What does the other girlfriend that was on the phone say?
She goes, "I was talking to you too." Like, there was no, like, I can't explain it. You know what I mean? She can't account for it either. I was like, you gotta know we were talking to each other. Cause I go, "Oh, I'm pulling into the other girlfriend's house. I gotta go, I love you," kind of thing, right? and then I'm dead serious. And I look at and it was until she started yelling at me, kind of like she was really upset, that I looked at the clock and I go, 45 minutes vanished. And I can't explain it. I'm like, I'm in the car, I'm driving. You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden you go into another dimension, but you're not. And then you're like, well, you think you would say, well, you know, you're in a different position, or you held your hands a different way. None of that. It was like they stopped time, took me, plunked me back in the car, you know, did something with my memory, whatever, did something to her, because obviously she doesn't know. There was no like, well, I heard a thump, or, you know, you hung up the phone, or none of that. Because I asked her, I was begging her, I was like, "Come on, you gotta tell me something, please." You know what I mean? Like I'm literally trying to figure this out in my head. And it was bizarre. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever had in my life. Because, you know, most of the time, you know, something happens, they take you, whatever, oh, okay, fine. You know what I mean? It's not like you're actually talking to somebody, or somebody's looking at you, or most of the time, you know, like looking at the clock, looking at the time. You know, I don't usually pay attention to that. But like I said, this one was so visceral because she was so angry at me, the other one, when she goes, "You know, I was waiting for you. What the hell were you doing?" And I'm like sitting there going, "Was I with the other girlfriend having a great time and lost track of time?" No, because I remember I was like driving, I'm going, I know what time it was. I'm driving down the Beltline, I'm looking at the clock. And like I told you, I just looked at the moon, and then that's it. Like, there was no, "Ooh, I see a craft. Ooh, I see an alien. Ooh, they're gonna take me." None of that. It's just like, boom, I'm mesmerized by the moon, and 45 minutes is gone.
Wow.
Literally. And that was...
That sounds better than the panic of knowing they're coming.
Exactly. In a weird way, yeah. I mean, there wasn't a scratch on my car. My car got wrecked. You know, we screwed up something in the process, kind of thing. None of that. It was just, it was one fluid thing that happened. And I wonder if I actually go into regression, maybe they can, you know, maybe there's something there. I don't know, because, you know, that's the thing about my disability. It's supposed to be that damage is done to the brain. It's that trauma right at that time when you're born, the lack of oxygen, right? And then everything subsequently is about muscles and bones and your body and how you move. But I also have to contend with the fact that I have the damage, but I'm also aging. See? And that's another unique thing specifically to me, more, or maybe to other disabled kids too, if you live long enough, you know what I mean? But I always keep asking my physical therapist, is this progressive? No, it's not. But you're gonna age and you're gonna fall apart just like everybody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, I think it all goes back to, that's why they want to take me. That's why they want to experiment, or they want to gather data or do whatever, is that, you know, again, I don't want this. I really don't. I mean, like I told you, that twinge in my soul when we were talking about a child, it was so hard. Because I could feel the pain. I could feel her pain. And I could see the sorrow in her eyes. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I mean, really, God, you know, just to have that feeling and know that you know, maybe we were kind of influenced by all this, you know, seeing your children taken and losing your children and not knowing them. And I mean, I've even had these weird thoughts of like, so what happens if they take your sperm and your ovum and they create a baby, right? And they create a hybrid. What was that soul meant to be with them? Or was that soul meant to be here on Earth? That's a weird thing for me. You know what I mean? I mean, to think about. And I don't think anybody has ever really thought that far ahead. But truly, if you think about it, if that soul was meant to be with human parents, well, its destiny has been altered no matter what. And that's their will. That's their will to do whatever they want with that child or that being.
Yeah,
or,
it's
you know.
terrifying to think about.
Yeah, and think about it. That's supposed to be your child. You know.
Take a right turn here.
Sure.
With all your surgeries and scans and everything, any implants or anything like that?
I don't think so, but I've not specific. You know what I mean? They're very specific when they stick you in the MRI machine because they're looking for, you know, did you fall? Did you this? Did you break this? Did you do that? I mean, I know I've had marks I can't explain. I had, you know, like stuff come out of my nose, and you know, with the nosebleeds and stuff. I had weird marks. My doctor mom was like, "Well, there's something on the back of your calf, and it's a triangle mark." I'm like, "What?" I mean, you would think you'd know. I mean, especially for me, because if I fall or scratch myself, I'm gonna feel it. I'm gonna know it more than anybody else. It's not like, oh, you know, I smacked into something and I didn't remember, and then you got a bruise or something like that. But there was a few times, yeah, that was in the 90s too. It was about 96, 97. And she goes,
What came out of your nose?
well, what I saw.
There's a question you don't
Yeah,
answer,
I know.
right?
It's weird. I thought it was a booger, but it was like a triangle thing. It was like it was just like it didn't look like, it looked organic. And I'm like looking at it, I know this sounds stupid, but you blow it out of your nose and you're like, when you blow your nose a million times, it doesn't look like this. You know what I mean? I don't know if it was an implant or something, you know, on purpose, but I felt like, you know, geez, it came out of my nose and my nose was hurting and everything else, you know, or if like, and then I get these really bad headaches, temple headaches and back of the head headaches and stuff. And I've had them ever since I was a little kid, but it feels like, you know, again, you wake up, you don't feel refreshed. You feel like you're exhausted, you know? And for me, it's very specific. Like I remember, I'll go back to what you were saying, but like when I remember one time I was laying in bed and I woke up and see, I twist in the night. I don't do what more normal people do. You know, you turn, you kick, you move, but you're doing it while you sleep. Me, if I want to turn, I've got to actually wake up, pull myself over, shift myself, and go back to sleep. And I do that all night, you know, through the process. But a couple of times, especially in that one encounter in an apartment with my roommate, it literally felt like I was laid in bed and the covers were shaking flat over me. And that's almost next to impossible for me, unless I was abducted, taken, and they just put the blankets a certain way. Because usually, I mean, that's the whole thing. I, you know, usually kind of fix it a certain way and then lay in bed. But it always, you know, because I move, it's always like that. But like I said, this one particular time, I felt like that too.
Wow.
And again, I can't account for it. All I can tell you is, you know, what I kind of know. And, you know, it's not like I want these things. It's not, I mean, there's no glamour in a sense of it. It's all I can tell you is what I know is the truth and what I've experienced. And I want to be truthful. That's the thing. I mean, I'm disabled. I don't want to live a lie, you know? I can't hide who I am. But to couple that with, I mean, think about it. You know, I'm also dealing with my disability, the challenges in life, you know, things that happen. And then there's this. There's absolutely this. I can't even go to my parents about it, for crying out loud. But I can tell you this much. My father's anger specifically made me think about that one time when they were arguing with those aliens. It just smacked of this whole, you know something, you just don't want to admit it, and you're going to try to make me look like I'm crazy. Seriously. And you know, my mother, it's, like I said, it's been a running joke and all throughout my life. I remember I went to go visit my aunt for Christmas, and this is like Christmas '86, so I'm like 12 years old, and she bought me this alien UFO book, right? They thought, oh, this is a cool gift, right? And I'm trying to hide it in her house, stuff it in a drawer because I'm scared deathless of this. And I don't want to I don't want to be rude to her, you know what I mean? So I did. I went in the lower part of her house and stuffed it in a drawer in her desk drawer and just kind of hid it with a bunch of stuff because I didn't want to take it with me. I didn't want to read it. But like I said, I think that really shifted when I was about 15. Because I read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, Transformation, and then at that time, and then I didn't really, for the longest time, I didn't read anything. I'd watch a couple of shows. I felt like it was a coping mechanism, honestly, for me. Because I feel like if the more I'm not going to a UFO group or I'm not seeing necessarily a therapist about it. I have mentioned to my therapist, I say, look, with one caveat, don't put this on the record, please. Because I don't want anybody thinking I'm nutty. I really don't. I mean, I really feel like I try to stay grounded about it and just describe exactly what's going on to me and why. And
Well, this is going on the record.
sure, yeah, definitely. No, I know
Yeah,
that.
it's
No, I know
It's
that.
okay if this
No,
goes on.
sure, absolutely. I want people to understand. Maybe there's something that, I feel maybe is ordinary to my encounters, right? But maybe it might help someone that maybe they've experienced something similar,
Yeah.
or at least to understand it. And I think that's important to me, just as much as when I read any of the books or any of the encounters. Like I tell people, like the Barney and Betty Hill incident. Okay, you've got a black man and a white woman in the '60s, and they're married, they're a couple, and they get abducted, and they don't know what to do. They don't know who to go to. They don't know what to turn to. But they have no benefit of gaining from that whatsoever because they're shining a light on themselves at a time when people were intolerant. And I always say this to people, and I mean this even about my encounters. I try to pick something in my mind to cope with it, honestly, but also to understand it and say, look, this is not a dream. This is not some fantasy you're having. This is real. And the same thing I always say about the Barney and Betty Hill incident. If you want to believe it didn't exist, fine. Then you explain to me, how does a social worker in the 1960s draw a map of where she thought these guys were from, and then 7 years later, a woman takes a star chart and matches that map exactly down to the star that had only been discovered in 1968.
Yeah.
So this is a woman who has no knowledge of astronomy and everything else, but drew from her experience, and in my mind, validated every part of it. And it's not, like I said, I don't want to be, a full on, here you're just believing it to just believe it. I'm more of okay, I want to understand what I'm going through. I want to know why they're doing this to me. And the same thing with those poor people. I mean, they kind of struggled with it for a while because, again, it was the fear, the anxiety, the things you have to deal with. And you have to deal with society, not necessarily, they were well-respected people, but I'm sure in the back of their minds, they were worried about, well, maybe I'm going to meet somebody today that might be prejudiced against me for loving my husband or loving my wife. So, you know what I mean? So that's another reason why I wanted to do this, is to stay factual, let someone know, maybe it can help someone, honestly. And if it can honestly help someone and lessen that trauma or lessen that, give you a better understanding, because it's not like we can stop it. How do you stop an abduction? Seriously, any more than, you go to collect an anthill or do whatever. You really can't. You can't prevent it. You can't stop it. All you can do is pretty much kind of steel yourself as best you can and say, hopefully I won't die during the experience or have a heart attack and croak. Any of that stuff. But, like I said, I wish it was something that was positive. I wish it was something like some of these other people say, well, they come to me, they talk to me, everything's friendly, everything's loving, and this kind of thing. They don't tell me anything. They don't tell me it's going to be the end of the world. They don't tell me the world's going to get better. Like I told you, that instance about feeling about a soul and the profoundness of, well, if this was my child, was my child meant to have a human life here on Earth? Or were they meant to be going off into space and being a part of whatever they're doing? And I kind of, honestly, that frightens me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
it's
terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what they're meant for. It's almost like your kid was kidnapped, and next thing you know, you lose them forever, and they're living on the other side of the planet because they're a slave to someone. You know what I mean? I don't know how I feel that way. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not something you would think about. It's not something I don't think most people would think about anyway. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope they have good lives, and I hope they're not slaves or enslaved to their situations. I mean, but again, I've never heard anybody talk that way. That's just my own feeling, probably from my own encounters and things. Yeah, but
wow. It's wow.
See,
such a terrifying thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when being a kid, I've always you met my dad, or at least talked to him.
Sure.
So I've always been into the paranormal and always believed in these kind of things, and that's such a terrifying thought to me, being abducted and never seeing anybody again, or like, it's always been in the back of my mind but thank God I've never been abducted.
No, absolutely. Knock on wood. It's like I said, and I have a habit. I really have a habit. Every night I want to close the curtains. I get into bed, I pull the blankets over my head. It's not from watching Scooby-Doo, okay, as a kid. It's literally, I mean, I would be like, my friends or my parents or even my cousins would be like, you're going to suffocate underneath there. I don't know how I do it. It's like, I have to have that security before I fall asleep.
Yeah, I would too.
And again, living alone, and you know what I mean? Like, cause it's weird, every little noise you hear, every little thing you hear, it's like, it's hard to explain. You live your life, right? But it's just, there's just this, it's hard to explain. It's just like this overwhelming sort of feeling of, oh my God, they're coming, and what's gonna happen, and you're like, are you gonna be ready? Are you gonna be able to handle it? Is it gonna be an okay thing? Is it like that thing about my brother? I mean, I hope my brother's in heaven. I hope his soul's okay, and not a hybrid,
Yeah.
with a bunch of aliens. I mean, God only knows if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, but seeing that was like, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like you're looking yourself in the mirror, but you're going, that's not you, and that's not anybody you know. I mean, I felt like it looked like my brother, but it didn't feel like, oh, that's him. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe. It was almost like if you think you see the twin of Steve somewhere, and you go up to the guy and he's like, I'm not Steve. You know what I mean? But you go, but you look like Steve, right? You get that sort of accidental whatever circumstance or whatever. And yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but that was absolute bizarre to me. I mean, absolutely bizarre to just see that and feel that. And I can't even, like I said, when I saw those little children and her and me and that vulnerability, I told you, it's really interesting because I kept saying, she's naked, she's beautiful, don't do this to her, leave her alone. At the same time, you're just like, I can't do anything, I can't stop this. I mean, if you saw your wife or your children in a house and the house is burning, you can, you're like, I'm gonna go and save them. I'm gonna do what I can, grab a bucket of water, do whatever. You can't do anything with this. You can't.
Completely helpless.
Yeah, you can't. And then it's like I said, that fear. I mean, my God, it felt like just somebody's grabbing my soul and just going like this, squeezing out. Like I just want to hide so badly. And that was another weird thing too. Going through the regression, like I kept saying, my legs feel like they're gonna fly apart. Like there was just this vibration of whatever they were doing or however they held me. It just felt like, you feel like you're in a cage, but it was a weird feeling. Like you feel it in your body. Like I felt it in my body, and I wanted to fight. I wanted to resist. I want to do something, and and it's weird. I'm trying to tell myself in my mind, act like Superman. Think, like steal yourself in your mind, steal your strength in your mind, in your spirit, and hopefully you can get through this. But at the same time, they're like, they're kind of mocking me, and I'm saying, yeah, like Superman, whatever, you know, that kind of thing, you know, and that to me was kind of bizarre, but it's almost like saying to yourself, you just want to be strong enough to say, okay, I'm not weak in this situation. It's, you know, like hopefully if anybody else had been in the same kind of predicament, they'd feel the same way, you know, because you have to kind of tell yourself that. Because to me, like I said, the guilt that I still carry, I mean, of not being able to help her, living in fear for that long. I mean, that long. And it felt liberating to me when I finally at least figured it out. Sure, it's traumatic, but honestly, on another level, it felt like, oh my God, a weight was lifted in a weird way. Because at least I knew, you know? And that's the hard part too, so. Yeah.
You know, no, I like your analogy. You're an ant. There's nothing you can do, you know? It's, that's, it's terrifying.
Thank you
You're
so much
You're
for telling
welcome.
your story.
You're welcome. I just hope, honestly, whatever they gain from me, that it's worth it. I mean, that's the only thing you think about it. You know, it's like, I hesitate to say this, but you know, it does feel like an assault. It does feel like a rape. I mean, I'm not taking anything from anybody who's been attacked or had to go through those things or being raped or assaulted or whatever, but you just can't help that feeling.
It's the ultimate assault.
Right. And it's one of those things you can't necessarily go to your accuser and say, well, you committed a galactic crime or, you know, whatever.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
No,
you know.
I would think that the mental anguish of the whole thing would actually be more traumatic because who can you tell? It's like, that's
And
why
they
I feel
can-
like this is.
And they can assault you again at will.
Right. And so I feel like this is important to let you tell your story because there are others out there who have, you know, felt the same thing or, you know, maybe not the exact same encounter, but, you know, it's important to be able to relate to somebody,
Sure.
you know.
But like I said, I hope it's all worth it. I hope whatever they gain, it's worth it because at least you can turn tragedy and trauma into some form of triumph, at least, you know, if it helps humanity, if it helps them, if it, you know, whatever the case may be. But, you know, like I said, the sad part, like I said, just a tiny part of me was like, we didn't have a child. We're not gonna have a child, you know? And that's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird for me to say that, you know? And just to have that sort of guilt just kind of lingering there. And then say to myself, but I was so adamant not to have children. I was so confident to have that. And then I think, you know, like I said, facing it now after the totality of all these
Yeah, but it was your
experiences.
choice,
I know.
not theirs.
I know. That's the thing. That is the thing. That is the thing. So hopefully, like I said, I hope it can help you guys. I hope it can help everybody that's gonna see this and help them to understand as much, like I said, of all the different experiences or encounters that I've read about and seen people go through, you know, for the same reasons, that you just kind of say to yourself, you're not crazy. You're not making this up. You're not wanting this to happen. You're not going to get rich from it. You're not going to get fame out of it. But at least you can do is educate people. And that, I think, is the most important thing. If we can help people and you can educate people and you can hopefully, I mean, in some weird way, you know, I hate to say cope because cope is not the right word for it. I think it's better to say maybe understanding. You know, have some understanding of something you really can't understand.